Ever wanted to write your own game? And did you know that you could write it in Visual Studio with ease? Find out more on this episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Visual Studio Toolbox. I'm your host, Leslie Richardson, and today I'm excited because we're going to be talking about video games today. So joining me is David Lee from the C++ team, who's going to be sharing how we can all be more productive developing games in Visual Studio with C++. Hey, David.
Hey, Leslie. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great. I'm super excited to show everyone some of these Unreal Engine integrations that we have been building in Visual Studio.
Sweet. So before we dive in, would you care to tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you typically work on?
Of course. So as you said before, I am in the C++ team. I am the game developer product manager in Visual Studio. So everything from building games in Visual Studio to the MSVC compiler. For all of you who are watching, just send me a tweet. My Twitter handle is there at the CBP PPM for any feedback. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, so video games, very popular topic in the development world. I know a lot of people initially started coding just because they wanted to write their own games and stuff. So can you tell us a little bit more about, how developing video games can have its challenges and maybe what using Visual Studio and C++ can do to alleviate some of that?
Yeah, Leslie. I've chatted with quite a lot of game developers out there and really understand their needs. So from indie developers to students to all of our first-party game developers. And as more I learned and I listened, a lot of pains have surfaced from game development. I think one of the biggest things that I've heard is the mental task switching. A lot of developers out there, when they work on a game, whether it's using their proprietary engine or Unreal Engine, sometimes they have to switch back and forth between Visual Studio. And each time you open up the Unreal Editor, switch back to Visual Studio, and then close it, that takes time. And instead of having a smooth flowing work, then you give a lot of unnecessary mental energy by getting distracted and not be as productive. So this is one of the few things that the team at C++ and Visual Studio has set out to tackle.
Awesome. Yeah, I can relate. I did write like one video game in college, and specifically I was using a combo of Unity and I think IntelliJ at the time, and just having to jump between those back and forth, neither were like seamlessly incorporated into the other, was definitely time consuming, especially when your game is a buggy mess and you're trying to deal with that. Cool. So yeah, would you care to show us how Visual Studio can save the day in that sense? And you talked about Unreal, which is going to be the focus for today, right?
Yes. So today we're going to be focused on Unreal Engine specific features that we have built in Visual Studio. Just to give everyone a brief overview, we'll be going over how to see your blueprint references in Visual Studio. We have added code analysis. We have added Unreal Engine log streaming. So all those things you don't have to keep going to the Unreal Engine editor for, including adding a class. There's a few templates out there. So quite a lot of features that we're introducing in Visual Studio 2022 17.5, with some of the features currently in preview in 17.6 preview 1. To get started, I definitely want to show everyone how to enable these features. So one of the things that is absolutely needed for you to see blueprint references is the Visual Studio integration tool It is an Unreal Engine plugin. So here I'm going to show you 2 steps to get your sources. So one is from GitHub. We have open sourced this plugin on GitHub, so we welcome the community to contribute to this extension. And you can, if your project has a custom Unreal Engine, or if the marketplace installer doesn't work, this is the way to get your features working. So the simplest way is there's a whole bunch of instructions here in the README, but basically you just clone this extension, make sure the plugin is enabled in Unreal Engine, and you should be all set to go. Now, for most of you out there, you might find installing it through the Unreal Engine Marketplace a little bit easier. So in the Unreal Engine Marketplace, the tool is called Visual Studio Integration Tool. It's published by Microsoft, and all you gotta do is download, and we support Unreal 4.27 and the newest Unreal Engine 5 versions. So once you download this, you go to your Unreal editor and make sure you enable this integration tool. If you have any issues whatsoever, we do have a troubleshooting page. So it's on the GitHub. There's this troubleshooting section, and there are some common steps you can take to basically diagnose any potential issues you might run into. So without further ado, let me switch over to Visual Studio. So Leslie, have you played with Unreal Engine before?
I have not. I'm more of a Unity person, or I've been more of a Unity person in the past.
Yeah, I am by no means a game developer. I played around with Unreal Engine a little bit on my own time. But I think one of the things that we heard from our developers is Blueprints is a visual scripting language you can use to build your game. With bigger production games, eventually you want to migrate those blueprints to actual C++ code. For example, you can prototype something really quick in Blueprints, and when you find out the thing works, you ask your devs or yourself to refactor and remove the blueprint. And previously, the only way to see your blueprints was to open up the Unreal Engine editor and go and search for your blueprints. Here, we have added some Codeless hints. So you can see right here, class Lyragame API. By the way, this is one of the Unreal sample projects. Once you click on blueprint references, you'll get a list of blueprints and their associated asset paths.
That's awesome. So before, you just had to go back into the Unreal Engine and just double check what blueprints and their correct area paths that you needed.
Exactly.
Yikes.
And if you had to wait, which it's not good to wait. So if you see these blueprints and they have associated asset paths, you can actually double click on them and see your asset information. So here we have some properties with different categories. You can collapse them, you can sort, you can even filter out what you want to see. So here's a list of all the things if this list gets too long. So this is a great way to reference your blueprint usages without going to the Unreal editor.
That's awesome. I'm loving the integration. Definitely not having to swap between 2 different pieces of software in this case.
Yeah. So Before we talk about another feature, I want to show that if you might need to refresh your blueprints, to do so is under the project menu, and here, rescan UE blueprints for your starter game. All right, so let's
just your data and stuff.
I'm sorry?
Does that just refresh your data, like if you updated in Unreal while you have this blueprint
Yeah,
open?
it will refresh if you do that. So another thing I wanted to show you is we added some code analysis into Visual Studio. This first round of code analysis leverages the Unreal Header tool, which here, it's basically a tool that is used when building an Unreal Engine game. Let's say you make some mistakes and you don't even call this super important Unreal macro. Once you hit save, the code analysis will run the Unreal Header tool and give you some hints of why things are not working. So here you can see purple squiggles. It says Unreal Header tool unknown specifier. So there, before you even compile, you can see, to save you some time, that this is not the right thing, right? This super important macro, for example, it says expected a generated body function at the start of the class. And that's because I commented out, but typically you might make some mistakes that you not catch until compile time. And these code analysis is designed to save you time. So the next feature that I want to show you is also in this whole realm of, let's not rely on the Unreal Editor. I just want to stay in Visual Studio. And this next feature that I want to show you is the UE log streaming. So now you don't even have to go look inside your Unreal Editor for any logs. In this line 543, I've added a UE log to capture every time we shoot the weapon, you have some log texts. So let's run this and boot up the game.
Yeah, so while that's building, I mean, it is really nice to see little things like just being able to check your logs in Visual Studio and all these other things. You're just not constantly swapping back and forth, right?
Right.
Going back to the assets page, like when you double clicked on a blueprint and it displayed all the data related to the blueprint, can you, or are there plans to, if not already, are there plans to be able to update your data via that window?
They're not current plans. I think typically you don't need to refresh that many times. But if the community wants it, we will build it.
Awesome. Cool.
Here's the Unreal Editor booting up. All right, now we're in the game. Let's play and try to win this game. Oh no, I died. That was quick.
I'm so bad at shooting games.
So let's go back to Visual Studio. As you can see here, there's a new window called UE Log Preview. Here, we can have two options for you. With all the logs that's generated throughout your entire game, you can now filter. Remember, the log we added is log Lara ability system. So if we go to categories, log layerability system. We want to unselect everything, select this, and then look. Every time
Awesome.
I shot, it says pew pew pew. And of course, if you want to see more of the logs, you can also check this verbosity option to really display whatever you need. Yeah.
That is really it's really nifty. Definitely just to have your typical console logs and stuff all in one spot. Like, you're already using a lot of logging to debug, chances are. So making sure it's all in one spot instead of having to add the extra time it takes to, again, go back to Unreal is pretty sweet.
And if you for some reason close the window and you can't find it, it's in View, Other Windows, and UE log. So if you click this, then you can see the log again.
Excellent.
So let's talk about another thing that I've learned with when talking to all the Unreal developers is Unreal Engine has a lot of complicated macros. Unreal Engine, there's unique macros everywhere, but previously you can have a macro, for example, something like this, a U function. You have to remember all the parameters you need to put in. But now, if you hover over this, we have added macro expansion.
And when you say macros, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, these macros are instead of typical functions, Unreal Engine uses a bunch of heavy macros line by line in order to achieve a lot of things more quickly than writing lines and lines of code.
Awesome.
So this is an example of a pretty complicated macro that previously you weren't able to see the entirety of it. So now you can either expand in line or copy, so you can paste it to another their editor window, and so you don't have to remember all the things that it needs. For example, U function. We have some of the other maybe uProperty macro. So these are the macro expansions that we have added. The last thing that I want to show you is how to add a class. And now we've been on Unreal Engine 5 for quite a while. Let's switch over to a Unreal Engine 4 project. So the classic action RPG, you can see all the features here work. You can see your blueprints. You can see your asset information, but you can also add class. Once again, we heard from developers it used to be that you had to open up the Unreal Editor, add a specific C++ class, and then open up Visual Studio again. But now you can right-click on your Solution Explorer, add UE class, and we have provided 4 templates for you to choose from. So, for example, if I want to add a new pawn, let's just say my pawn. You click add. You can see the path information. Once you click OK, Visual Studio will generate that template file for you in both the C++ and the header files. So file modification detected. We click reload all. And now if you see in the Solution Explorer, my pawn and .cpp, my pawn.h.
Awesome.
Here. Yeah, so
Great. So, dang, you even had to create your classes via Unreal first before playing around with them in BS.
Yeah, a lot of the things I showed everyone today was only achievable in the Unreal Editor. But
Yeah, we
now,
only opened Unreal like once, and that was just to play
yeah,
the game. So that's really exciting, just to be able to stick to one spot.
right. Yeah, so I think this is all the features that we have today.
Yeah,
But rest assured, the team is working hard to build more and more of Unreal integration into Visual Studio. So if you have a great idea, please let us know on developer community, or you can even tweet at me.
well, great. So if people want to go learn more about how you can get started writing your own C++ games or using the Unreal Engine within Visual Studio, you can get started with all the links that we're posting below in the description. So take a look at that and start making your own games.
Yeah, there is a blog that I've wrote describing in more detail about all of these integrations that is now available in Visual Studio.
Good stuff. Well, David, thank you so much for being on the show. I can't wait to see what comes next for game development and C++ and how it just integrates itself into Visual Studio. That's really exciting. And yeah, thanks again, David.
Thanks, Leslie. I'm happy to be here.
Sweet. And thanks for joining us, audience. And with that, happy gaming and happy coding.